When I commenced my coaching journey, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so, as a result of that, I tended to try and research everything. The problem with trying to research everything was that it was like trying to hold the sea back with a broom. We live in an information inflation at the moment. There is so much information available to us. And the net result was that I began to suffer from information overload. The reason I bring this up is because information overload is one of the 7 things that every aspiring coach needs to know about. If they're going to fast track their progress, one of the major things that you need to overcome is information overload and to develop the strategies and the means to be able to overcome that. So stick with me for a little while, and what I'll do is I'll describe to you what information overload looks like so that you can diagnose whether you are experiencing it. And at the same time, if you can recognize it in yourself, you can recognize it in your clients, and you can become a better coach as a result. So, information overload is natural in the modern world. Let's face it, even the fact that you're accessing this YouTube video or this presentation by me is evidence that there is a lot of information available to us. And of course, with the inception of AI, which many people use like a search engine, information overload is becoming compounded on a daily basis. The problem with it is that it can lead to a sense of overwhelm. You become so inundated by information from so many different fields and areas that you might feel like you're chasing your tail. You might feel like your projects are now, instead of one simple thing that you need to get nailed, are 12 different things that you need to be working with. I personally compounded my own information overload by convincing myself that tackling lots and lots of different projects in one go was a good idea because I could always go back to one of those projects in the future. I could go back to this one. I could graze. I could pick and choose. What I did in the end was I led myself into a spiral of information, 9/10 of which was useless to me at the time I was accessing it. There are ways to overcome information overload, and one of the strongest ways to do that is to simply become better organized. I found that using my calendar and plotting out what it is I need to do on pretty much a daily basis is a great way to overcome information overload. The temptation to scroll and the temptation to graze, to access, is very strong. But we have to become disciplined and able to resist that temptation. We have to come to terms with the fact that we are fired by dopamine. Dopamine is an addictive chemical within our brain. And a lot of people think that dopamine is a reward chemical, but it's only half the story. Dopamine is a chemical which rewards anticipation. Within our evolution, we were designed or selected by evolution to become very good at anticipating reward. It was often the thing that meant that our forefathers and forebearers could survive. If you could anticipate how to access your next meal, you're more likely to access that next meal than the person who couldn't. So we have dopamine as an anticipatory chemical and reward system wired into us as an evolutionary necessity. Unfortunately, just as we can now access meat 7 days a week and sugar 7 days a week, we can now access gratification and dopamine 100 times, 1,000 times a day through many of the social media platforms that are available to us. The result is that we are now becoming information obese. And because we are information obese, our appetite for more information is increased. And the result is that we are now overloaded with information, and it's become a bad habit. It's become a behavior which is self-defeating. It has diluted our ability to glean through information and pick out what we need. It has diluted our ability to limit the amount of information we take on. The presence of lots of information is not an excuse to consume it all, in the same way as the presence of lots of alcohol, tobacco, sugar, or sex isn't an excuse to consume as much as we can, however pleasurable the idea may be. So information overload and overwhelm are something that we have to learn to deal with, recognize, and limit. And the best way to do that is to organize ourselves better so that we only focus on one task at a time. Have you got that? If you want some advice about how to develop your skills as a coach, do feel free to click on the link below. I'll provide resources, freebies, modules, ebooks as I go along. And you can find them all in my PayHip store. I've related to you my own personal struggle with information overload. And if I haven't, I'll go over it again now. When I started to approach becoming a coach, I accessed everything. I watched all the videos on YouTube. I went through the AI process. I downloaded and cut and paste and provided the means to be able to, at my fingertips, access any element of my knowledge that I required. But what I found myself doing was wading through treacle. I'd get up in the morning, I'd have so much information at my disposal, I'd end up getting nothing done. So I had to learn to strategize, and I had to learn to use a calendar, and I had to learn how to break down my tasks into manageable sections and portions. And this is what I would recognize. And this is what I would recommend to you as an emerging coach. Now, the good news is that I've provided information and resources which can help you in this. Instead of having to access everything, just have a look at my 7 main things a coach needs. And it will give you that cut and dried access to information without you having to do all the research and nasty wading that I had to do. Anyway, the third thing in my series of 7 things every coach must know is information overload. And with it comes overwhelm. And if you can conquer that in yourself, you will be better able to recognize it in others. And if you can recognize it in others, it will make you a better coach quicker. I'll catch you next time for the next of my 7 things that every coach needs to know.